So there's a scene from the show Vikings that has really stuck with me, that is really interesting to me. Now, there are things with this show that I don't like, that are biased, that are historically inaccurate, but I'm not going to talk about any of those right now. I want to talk about this scene that, to me, is very eye-opening, very moving, very interesting, philosophically. So, it's from one of the early seasons. You have the character Athelstan, the monk. He's gone back to England from living with the Vikings to be with King Ecgbert. Now, King Ecgbert is kind of eccentric, and he appreciates art. And so after he gains Athelstan's trust, he takes him to a secret room to show him his most prized possessions, his secret treasures. And these are Roman works of art, ancient Roman works of art. Now, they're in Britain. Britain was conquered by the Romans a long time past, but the Romans had long since left, and they were basically living in the ruins of the Roman civilization that was there. You know, they built houses out of wood and thatch, where the Romans had built houses out of stone. And so all around them, historically, are these, pieces of, architecture and art that are, beyond their conception, and they don't really know what to do with them. And so Ecgbert has gathered them into this room to keep them safe and to keep them secret, protect them from, being destroyed by zealous priests or whatever. He walks Athelstan over to this wall that has some painted images of Roman gods, Roman heroes, and he asks Athelstan to look at these paintings, and he asks him how they make him feel. And Athelstan pauses and he says, "I find them indescribably beautiful." And that caught me off guard the first time I saw it. It made me think of it in a whole new way. So these pictures, to our modern eyes, they're not that impressive. They're just, paintings, of characters, whatever. That's not deep. That's not art. What's the secret, ironic meaning behind it? Nothing, right? They're just pictures. But imagine living when they lived, where they lived. Imagine you live in 8th century England, this war-torn country, petty kings fighting against each other. The land is ravaged by Viking sea raiders, and you have never seen a work of art like this. Now, that's not to say that the Saxons didn't have works of art. They absolutely did. They made beautiful pieces of metalwork. I'm talking, weapons and armor and golden bowls and brooches, just of incredible beauty and skill and, intricate designs. But they didn't make anything like the Roman art, right? This was something different. The Romans had this desire with their art to depict the divine, to depict their gods, to depict these things that are beyond, normal life, that are so perfect and so beautiful. And so you see in their statues and in their paintings these figures of, incredible beauty and symmetry, the most perfect proportions, the most pure, beautiful faces you've ever seen, because in their view, that was divine. These perfect ratios, these perfect forms, that was what they wanted to create, to make the divine real on earth. That, in their view, was the purpose of art, was to depict beauty. And so these images depict figures of exquisite beauty. And so imagine you're in the 8th century, you've never seen anything like that. You're surrounded by, ugly people who are fat and have warts or are starving, and you see this image of this incredible, muscled, symmetrical figure, just the most perfect face you've ever seen. And you've never seen anything like this before, ever, in your entire life. What do? It would be literally beyond your comprehension. It would be something so beautiful that it blows your mind, that you have no way to describe it. You have no way to anchor yourself against it. It would just blow you away. And so when Athelstan says, "I find it indescribably beautiful," I think he literally means it is indescribably beautiful. It is beauty on a scale never before seen by those eyes, by people in that culture. It was outside their frame of reference. Contrast that to the way that we react to these images, right? How do we feel when we see these things? It's certainly not indescribably beautiful for us. I mean, maybe if you're a scholar on the subject and you really appreciate these things. But I mean, we see images like this all the time in our textbooks, on TV. We are overexposed to beauty, basically. We see these things so much that they don't move us. We see them even sometimes as silly and primitive, and we make jokes about them. It's not interesting to us. Whereas for Athelstan and Egbert, it blows their minds. Now, in the real world, we saw something similar happen in our Western history, and we call it the Renaissance. The rebirth of sort of classical art, classical literature, right? And you see, during this period, you see people emulating the ancient styles, the pursuit of perfection and beauty. And, in all of this, the idea is to depict, God and Christ and the angels, these divine forces, of absolute beauty, right? And I think, in my opinion, Renaissance Christian art is absolutely incredible. Just mind-blowing beauty, if you open yourself to it. But, again, just like with the Roman art, it's something that we're desensitized to. It's not very interesting to us. It's old hat, it's old-fashioned. It just doesn't move us the same way. It's like we stared at the sun too long and are now blind and are groping around in the mud, looking for meaning, because we can no longer see the light that is shining. Art of the last century is not interested in beauty. It rejects beauty, it deconstructs beauty. It imagines that beauty doesn't matter, and instead, tries to stimulate the mind or stimulate the genitals or whatever. And I don't think they do this maliciously, necessarily. I think they do it because, just like the rest of us, modern artists are not, they don't see beauty. They're not sensitive to beauty. Their eyes have been blinded by staring at the light for too long, just like anyone else. And so beauty doesn't move them. Beauty doesn't inspire them. They think beauty's not fair. Why should that be beautiful when I'm not beautiful, right? But I don't think that being desensitized to beauty is, endemic or impossible to get over, right? I think that by studying ancient history, by looking at old art and learning to appreciate it, learning the meaning behind it, learning the myths and the divinities that are supposed to be manifest inside it, we can make ourselves sensitive to beauty again. And we can learn to appreciate beauty, and we can learn to aspire toward beauty. And I think that's a good goal. That's a worthy goal. That is something we should aspire to, because life is short. There's only so much time that we have on this earth, and inside that time, I think we'd all like to see beauty manifest, because beauty is really, when you seek for what beauty is at the very bottom, beauty is the divine. Beauty is God.